Jude asks, tips to control a super friendly, super social young lab.
As most people know, we have lab as well, and our dog is, for a Labrador at least, very high drive. We have to be able to teach behaviours that don't equate to high-end rewards, so that the dog understands when it can put effort into something and when it should be calm and relaxed. So when we talk about life skills, we're not going to reward the dog at a very high end. We're not going to walk down the street teaching loose leash walking and giving the dog food, or playing games with the dog, or over socialising the dog to a point where it thinks every single person on the street is a very high end emotional reward. We're not going to do that. We're going to teach the dog to walk on a loose leash. Something that could probably help you with that would be we can put up a link in the answer as well to an article I wrote earlier on called Socialisation, What Is It Exactly? So you can understand that I'm trying to get a value of strangers and other dogs to my dogs, which my dog is, pleasantly happy that they're around. He's not overstimulated and crazy about them. I only want the dog overstimulated and crazy about rewards that I can control, things that I can pull out of my pocket, things that I can reward the dog with. I don't want my dog excited about swimming in the river so much that he won't recall if I call him out. I don't want my dog to love people so much that I can't call him away from them. At this point in time, you might need some remedial action, which might mean that you need to come along and train some fairly strong loose leash walking so the dog is quite distraction proof. So like I've mentioned with other people, we can lower the value of strangers to your dog to a point where your dog can regulate his or her emotions when they're around strangers. Those things are pretty important.
Sharon asks, what tips do you have for a handler to not panic, which then possibly makes the dog react more to an off-leash dog running towards you?
I wrote a blog article recently called The Broken Handler, and the problem is when a dog displays a behaviour that you find really hard to control, you come in a situation where you become sensitive to that trigger just as much as the dog. And maybe the dog doesn't notice the trigger, but your behaviour starts to indicate to the dog that that trigger's around, and you can switch the dog onto it as well. One of the ways that we get around that at Canine Pro is that we have an indoor training facility, so when we're trying to teach the handler how to handle their dog, they're not faced with the potential that distractions or dogs can come from anywhere at any time. They don't have to be environmentally sensitive. Once we can teach the handler how to control themselves and control their dog, we can bring distractions in a controlled manner, and we can teach the handler to become confident in their dog. We want to build what we call trust points between the dog and the handler, where the dog is shown previous triggers and chooses not to display the behaviour so that the handler can develop trust points in them, and they can go, look, I trust you enough to be able to walk down the street past the dog on the other side of the road, for example. I trust you enough to walk down and meet a dog. I trust you to be able to be let off leash, those sorts of things. Most people are walking their dog anyway, and they have no trust points left, and they're walking along just waiting for something to go wrong. The walk isn't enjoyable for the owner, it's not enjoyable for the dog, and it has a potential of disaster if something goes wrong. It could be a council action on your dog, it could be fighting, it could be all sorts of problems. So you've got really good reason to panic. What I'd be doing is I'd control the environment. That's a really important thing. And that might mean teaching your dog the exercises in a controlled environment like a backyard or a friend's property or something like that, so that it almost can't go wrong. It really comes down to just teaching the functional skills first, rather than trying to teach them in an environment where anything could go wrong, and it just may. So we've got to get away from those see what happens events when we walk out the door.
Shelley asks, we have a 6-year-old very traumatised male Jack Russell cross and a 7-year-old female deaf Jack Russell cross. The male dog is dominated by the deaf dog, and at night he wheezes on the furniture. We don't want to discipline him as he is already so traumatised from his first 6 months of life, but how do we stop him from doing it?
I picked this question because I think that it's really important to understand that the urination that you have in the house is a symptom of a greater problem. It also appears that you feel that the root cause of the problem is what happened in the first 6 months of his life. I've only gone through your question, but I tend to be more concerned with what's happening recently. So what we've got is that we've got a dog inside the house that's being dominated by an older dog. This isn't being restricted by you. This is probably producing some anxiety or stress in the dog, and he doesn't like to move around the house too much, so he doesn't attract attention from the dog that wants to dominate him all the time. So I believe that he probably is urinating that way. He understands that he's doing the wrong thing, and he's not supposed to toilet in the house, but if he tried to go outside the house, he would be punished, wouldn't he, by the older dog if he was moving around. So what's probably really important is to bring back some rules and boundaries inside your house that does not give the older dog the opportunity to dominate and pick on and bully basically the slightly younger dog. Sometimes if you come along and you introduce crate training in your house, you would find that you could give each dog some time in the house alone or even outside alone, where they don't have to be concerned about how the other dog is going to feel about what he or she is doing all of the time. So if that happened, this would allow this dog to develop its own identity, instead of saying my identity is created just to make sure that I don't piss off the older dog that wants to dominate me every time I do something wrong. I would not allow dogs to go around bossing one another around the place. This pressure can end up causing some sort of blowback where you'll get the older dog and the younger dog turning into, quite bad fights, because they're not living together very well right now. So I'd go on and say, I definitely would not discipline him, you're right, about urinating in the house. What I would do is that I would probably start crate training both dogs. This means when he's relaxed and he's in his crate and the door is closed, he can't be dominated by the older female. It means when he comes out in your house for a little while, he can run around the house without worrying about breaking your rules and boundaries. And she can be off in duty as well by being in her crate and not having to worry about whether or not he's doing the right or the wrong thing. When this starts to occur, he can start to recover his own identity, and then such times as that urination stops in the house, and if you see her go over to dominate him, you could then remove her from the circumstance by saying, hey, you're out of the house for that behaviour, go back in your crate for that behaviour, you're not allowed to run around and call the shots here. And I would reduce her need to feel responsible for his behaviours. I think that'll make him happier all over.
K-Rock asks, I want to be able to get my own pup and raise and train him or her to be my own personalised assistance dog. But my real estate says that the dog has to be outside regardless. My question is, how, if at all, can I get around this?
Okay, so I'll break the question into two parts. Number one, I want to get my own pup and train it as an assistance dog. Many people choose this option because it's more affordable and they can sort of tailor the dog and develop in the way that they think that he can assist them best. I think that's a really good idea. I think what goes wrong is that some people don't pick the right dog or don't get any help in picking the right dog. So it's really important to be able to pick a breed that's going to suit what you need, number one, and it's going to have the genetics and the temperament to be able to function in your lifestyle. So it's really important to pick the right dog first. That's number one. Number two is that I don't know what sort of a trainer you are, and we're not talking about getting a pet dog to play with you in the backyard. We're talking about a dog to escort you through life, through public areas, potentially shopping centres, airplanes, all sorts of things. So this means that if I was going to get any trainer's help, it would definitely be in at least the first 12 months of the dog's life. So you can develop the dog. Its development is more important than its us training. Once you have that working for you and you said, okay, I've got a dog with the right mindset, then you can turn it into an assistance dog. That's number one. Number two, your landlord says that you're not allowed to have a dog inside the house, but you need a dog for an assistance dog. If you have a medical diagnosis, and that says that your doctor says or psychologist says that an assistance dog would definitely assist you and improve your mindset or health, then discrimination actually says even without any certification of the dog, you are allowed to have public access to that. And just like if you needed a CPAP machine inside your house, it would be allowed. This doesn't mean the landlord will be happy with you even if you could force the equation. If it were me, I'd probably move into a pet-friendly home where they're quite okay with you so that you're not pushing the law over the top of somebody. But be aware that if you had a medical diagnosis and it was an assistance dog, then this is one way that you may be able to get around that.